Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a look at the top headlines. India and New Zealand sign landmark free trade agreement to deepen economic ties and expanding market access for exporters. A pact to significantly reduce tariffs on approximately 95% of New Zealand's exports to India, with over half becoming duty-free immediately. US considers punitive measures against Spain a year after the European country refused to allow ships carrying cargo bound for Israel to dock at its ports over the Gaza war. A photo of US President Donald Trump that had been removed from the cache of Jeffrey Epstein files released by the Department of Justice was restored on Sunday after officials determined none of Epstein's victims were in the image, the department said. Meanwhile, the Trump administration denies cover-up over redacted Epstein files. A Ukrainian drone attack damaged two vessels, two piers, and sparked a fire in a village on the Black Sea coast in Russia's Krasnodar region, as per authorities who confirmed today. Australian state premier pushes for stricter gun laws after Bondi mass shootings. Australian state parliament reconvenes to push through stricter gun laws after Bondi. Japan is set to take the final step to restart the world's largest nuclear power plant when the region of Niigata votes on the resumption of operations in a watershed moment for the country's pivot back to nuclear energy nearly 15 years after Fukushima. Southeast Asian foreign ministers meet in Malaysia today, seeking to end border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia that have killed at least 40 people and displaced more than 500,000 this month. A group of private equity firms led by Permira and Warburg Pincus have clinched a deal to acquire investment and accounting software maker Clearwater Analytics Holdings for about $8.4 billion, including debt. And let's start with some breaking news inputs that are coming in connection to the Bondi Beach shooting. Now, Australian police are saying that homemade pipe bombs and a tennis ball bomb were thrown at a crowd at the Bondi Beach before a mass shooting but failed to explode. Court documents released on Monday reveal the attack was carefully planned months in advance. 15 people were killed and dozens injured during the shooting at the Jewish Hanukkah celebration on December 14. Police allege the two attackers carried firearms and multiple explosive devices to the scene, throwing the bombs before opening fire. One of the alleged gunmen, Sajid Agram, was shot dead by police and was found to own 6 firearms. His son, Naveed Akram, has been charged with dozens of offenses, including murder and terrorism. Investigators say evidence recovered include weapons training images, bomb-making materials, and extremist videos underscoring the scale and intent of the attack. And I request retired Major General Sudhakar Ji to join me in the discussion here. He's an international relations and defense expert and joins us from New Delhi. Thank you very much, General, for joining me this morning once again. Now, General, there have, there's new information coming in that the attackers had indeed, in fact, carried out, a sort of recce even in firing before carrying out the attack. In fact, those images are on our screens right now showing Naveed Akram, practicing before carrying out the massacre. So clearly, the big questions now raised on the Australian security forces.
Yeah, Kriti, good afternoon. Thank you. Incidentally, I am not from Delhi. I am actually from Jaipur, but presently speaking to you, connecting with you from Secunderabad, close to Hyderabad. Anyway, goes without saying that any such activity will always be preceded by reconnaissance, by rehearsals, by contingency planning. When you have a thing like this, you have an in route and out route, escape route. These are all predetermined, pre-established. Only then one goes for these kind of activities. Otherwise, it is very difficult to conduct these activities. And also, in a country like Australia, since it is one of the leading and the white population majority country, you have things like the weapons are not, the gun laws are very stringent in Australia. They have a system, the guns are collapsed or broken into pieces. They have couriers who carry these broken pieces from place A to place B. They are received by the place B, somebody from place B, and thereafter they are assembled by a professional. So therefore, to say, and after they are received, they are sent through another courier to XYZ place. They're picked up and given to the professional who's supposed to execute this activity. This is the normal military method, so that one person doesn't know the second person, second doesn't know who the third person is, and the activity goes on without leaving any potential for disclosure or compromise of information. This is one part. Second part, you have brought out an issue that the Australian government has shown signs of complacency. Without doubt, they are a complacent lot. As long as nothing is happening, until they are hit by terrorists, they will never wake up. They are part and parcel of the culture of the leading economies, whether it is United Kingdom or USA or France or Germany, they leading Italy, they all form part of the same thought process, same culture, same way of life. Until they are hit, they will never call a terrorist attack in India as terrorist attack. They will always call it as a detonation or bomb blast or a gunmen have fired. And only after this incident which has taken place in Bondi, although I'm not saying that Australia hasn't had similar incidents in the past, but they needed to be shaken up, they needed to be woken up. Not that I am actually, complimenting for this event. All I'm saying is there has been a high degree of complacency. The security apparatus have taken things for granted because the time is coming in 21st century. Not only everyone has to be on the toes, the citizens themselves have to be taken along. They have to be galvanized into a very integrated component or ecosystem of security apparatus. It is not only the policeman standing on the street or moving in a vehicle who is responsible. Every citizen in every country has to be made responsible to ensure safety and security for the normal civilians and the citizens without arms. Back to you, please.
Sure. General, would you also say that there's now a need for Australia to also check its immigration laws? Because the status quo is such that it's really allowing anybody for short-term stays, just to have its revenue increased with these immigrants. But some of them are now turning out to be extremist elements and carrying out such attacks. Does that call for Australia to check its immigration processes?
Good point. Your point is well taken, Kriti. What I am responding to, these are my personal views, okay, based on my experience. You see, there was a timeline, let's say late 90s, in 1990, 1995, 1999 or so. This particular aspect was important. Today, immigration laws have been overtaken by technology. And when you talk about technology, what does the immigration law do? What is the objective? Objective is to prevent such kind of malified people or people with malified intention to carry out mayhem against innocent civilians, innocent people. Okay, so you what do you do to achieve that? You carry out a character scrutiny, carry out the host country from where they're coming out, and carry out the bona fide or the credentials are ascertained. And you go to the nearest police station. The police station will carry out verification from wherever they are staying. If it is a village, they send a special the courier or the police people. They carry out verification from that, carry out verification from the document, and carry out their past precedents of expenditure, how the money is being spent, where it is going, where it is coming from, such like activities. And also, you check up whether he's an employee, he is not, is what is he doing, and thereafter you come down to the nuts and bolts of the cases. If anything is pointing towards such kind of activities, then you narrow down. But the core of the issue is today every our human life, way of life is driven by internet. It is driven by social media. It is driven by by hybrid methods of communication, hybrid methods of transactions of money, hybrid like cryptocurrency. I would say it is a hybrid warfare going on. It's a currency system without any corpus fund. It will crash like, like a pack of cards in no time, in times ahead. So therefore, I would say more than the immigration laws, yes, you have a point. They must actually look into the immigration law. More than that is the current system of communication is very important because it is through internet people are getting radicalized. It is through internet. Mind you, Kriti, since you're asking an important question, let me tell you, there was a time when people from South Asia or elsewhere in the world, they used to travel physically all the way to epicenter of terrorism. Epicenter of terrorism in the world is the Afghan-Pakistan corridor. That is no longer required. The training of handling of an ID, improvised explosive device, handling of a lethal weapon system, handling of explosive, handling of any kind of surveillance devices, preparation of any kind of biological or chemical warfare like resin has been found in India. So such kind of training is being transmitted through internet. People don't have to travel. After the internet text is read, it is followed by a video clipping. After the video clipping, they put through the such kind of prospective candidate through rehearsals. In the rehearsal, they have a system. The mistakes are observed by the instructor and the feedback loop is given to the student. The student carries out similar kind of practices once, twice, thrice, 4 times. These are not in the clear view of the security monitoring agencies, the surveillance agencies. We need to adopt. You see, China, we may have been cursing China for extreme kind of steps they're taking to monitor their people, but some of the methods which China is adopting in Shanghai, in Beijing, in Xinjiang province, or any other province that way, may have to be picked up, studied in detail, and to suit our environment and requirement, they may have to be dovetailed in times ahead for better security and safety, not only the immigration laws. Back to you, Kriti.
Sure. Thank you for your comment there, General, but do stay on. There's some more information now coming in. Viewers, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says that his government will push for tougher gun laws against hate speech and extremism following the country's deadliest mass shootings in decades. Speaking to reporters, Albanese said that Australia would not allow ISIS-inspired terrorists to divide society and stressed the need for urgency and unity. He called for bipartisan support to create new offences targeting hate preaching and extremist activity. Earlier, the Prime Minister apologized to Australia's Jewish community over the attack at Bondi. Albanese said he felt the weight of responsibility for the atrocity and expressed sorrow for what the community and the nation had endured. He pledged that the government would work every day to protect Jewish Australians, defend their rights to practice their faith and participate fully in and safely in Australian society. Let's listen in.
I'm sorry for what the Jewish community and our nation as a whole has experienced. The government will work every day to protect Jewish Australians, to protect the fundamental right as Australians that they have to be proud of who they are, to practice their faith, to educate their children and to engage in Australian society in the fullest way possible. Racial vilification and promoting racial supremacy offence. So we're considering drafting options there. We're looking at changes to hate symbols offences as well, and also looking at changes to the Customs Act to ban importing extremist material or hate symbols. In addition to that, we had a discussion about gun laws. This is indeed a time where we have what is needed, which is urgency and unity, not division and delay. We're not going to let the ISIS-inspired terrorists win. We won't let them divide our society, and we'll get through this together. A summary of the legislative measures that will be considered: creating an aggravated offence for hate preaching, advocating violence against protected groups; increasing penalties for existing offences for hate speech, advocating violence or property destruction against protected groups; making hate motivation a factor in sentencing for Commonwealth crimes, with options to limit this to online threat and harassment crimes as announced, to expand to all Commonwealth crimes if required.
All right, request Sudhakarji to join me back in the discussion here. Sudhakarji, of course, a remorseful Albanese there, but the move to toughen the gun laws and fix the loopholes that it was riddled with is definitely a welcome one. But how would the government address the opposition that's coming in from the gun dealers and the lobbyists, over the ownership of guns by lawful, law-abiding residents?
Excellent, I would say, pointer that you are giving in your question, because for a democracy like Australia, they need to have an all-party meeting, maybe in camera, maybe closed door meeting, because without taking the opposition into confidence, it will be a no-go case for a country like Australia to carry out any change with regard to security, because like America has got deep state, so has Australia. Australia deep state is virtually, I would say, it can hold the entire economy to ransom. Although the economy is not very big, it is neither small. So it is considered as one of the leading economies. But having said that, Kriti, if you allow me, I would like to share my personal views. This is where the countries are going wrong. Australia has had the worst of carnage in recent times in Bondi. It is one of the beautiful, iconic beaches in the world. And still they're not getting things right. Getting things right is, what is the threat? I am a military man. I'll always apply my faculties and my approach in a military manner. It is the threat, the disaster which has been inflicted on the people, civilian innocent people, whether they're Jews or any other kind of religion. It is purely from a force which is invisible. That invisible force is going all out to establish a global caliphate. And that global caliphate, regardless of, I'm trying to define the threat, if you are allowing me. The global caliphate, they may not have been successful between 2000. We kept on claiming that the Western Alliance, they have decimated and broken the backbone of ISIS in that corridor of 262 kilometers across Syria and Iraq, way back in 2017. The last of the bastion was actually pulverized, and all kinds of bombastic English have been used, and we're beating our chest to glory. Today, what has happened? Between 2017 and 2025, 8 years, yesterday I think you asked a question, I alluded, they are into splinter groups. They have shifted to Northwest Africa. They're dominating the corridor called a Sahel corridor, with 10 countries very seriously inflicted with ISIS domination, and people are being butchered, they're being killed. Your news channel is covering that young children are being abducted from schools from every second, third day in country like Nigeria. So therefore, what am I coming to is that there is a bigger story to be actually seen. The bigger story nobody is painting. I'm sorry, I should not talk in this language, being a military man. Do you know that Muslim or the Islam is the only global religion, which looks the domination of the Islam as one of the singular objective? Does anyone know? Not even Christianity talk about it. Okay, look at the percentage. Christianity as on today is 32%, Islam is 24 to 25%, Hindu is 15 to 16%. By 2075, very, very professional, serious research have been carried out by notable universities in the world. I think it is Cambridge or Harvard maybe.
General, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but I believe we're digressing a bit from the point of discussion here, and I'm also running short on time in this discussion. But for everything else that you've shared with us, thank you very much, as we'd like now to move ahead. Viewers, now a senior Russian military official has also been killed in a car bombing in Moscow. Russia's investigative committee said that Lieutenant General Funnel Sarvarov, who headed the Army's Operational Training Directorate, died in the blast today. That's breaking news that's coming in. Authorities said that investigators are examining several possibilities, including the involvement of Ukrainian special services. No independent confirmation has been provided so far. However, But breaking news now coming in, a Russian general killed in an explosion in Moscow. We are looking out for more details. As they come, we will keep updating you viewers about it. But that's all we have for now. And we now move on to some news coming in from Japan. US Japanese government spokesperson Minoru Chiara has said that authorities will take appropriate action against excessive exchange rate moves, warning of the chance of intervention after last week's central bank meeting that caused renewed yen declines. Let's listen in.
足元では一方向なまた急激な動きも見られ憂慮しております。為替相場はファンダメンタルズを反映して安定的に推移することが重要であり、政府としては投機的な動きも含めて行き過ぎた動きに対しては適切な対応を。
This comes as the Bank of Japan raised interest rates to 0.75% from 0.5% last week, taking borrowing costs to levels unseen in 3 decades and narrowing the rate differential with the US Federal Reserve. Meanwhile, the dollar rose as high as 157.67 against the Japanese yen, its strongest level in 4 weeks. And I would like to welcome Dr. Ajay Dua. He is the former Secretary of Commerce and Senior Economist and joins us from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Dr. Dua, for joining me in this discussion. Now, we'd like you to explain why the Bank of Japan is adopting such a cautious tone once again that's making the yen slip even lower.
Thank you very much for involving me in this discussion. As you know, the Japanese government has seen a new prime minister come in just a few weeks ago. First time that we have a lady prime minister in Japan, but she does seem to have taken a hawkish attitude to almost everything what she has been publicly stating. First, it was her stand vis-a-vis Taiwan, which the Chinese didn't like. Thereafter, she also took a stand about Japan going nuclear, whether she meant making nuclear bombs or it was emphasizing the use of nuclear power in generation of electricity or others is still ambiguous. But Japanese prime ministers in the past have rarely commented about something which is a bogey in Japan completely, or I would say not bogey, something which is not allowed to be talked about. That's the nuclear weapons. Similarly, now the Japanese government is taking a stand in the field of economics. A stand is being taken, which is, as some newspapers have commented today, 10 years too late. What has been done by the Bank of Japan, as you mentioned, they have raised the borrow interest rates in Japan from 0.5 to 0.75%. It sounds very small, but this is the highest borrowing rate in Japan in the last 30 years. In Japan, it had been floating around almost close to zero. Second, this step has been taken at a time when the Japanese have been facing headwinds in their economic development. The wage rates in Japan have been shooting up, reflecting in higher inflation, and consequently, the Japanese economy and the Japanese public at large is bearing the effect of it. Not only this, the volatility which we are seeing in the Japanese yen ever since this announcement by the BOJ president was made to hiking up the rate is also linked to the fact that the president, when this announcement was made by the governor, who they call probably the president of the bank, he indicated that this is the beginning of a cycle which in 3 years could take the Japanese lending rates from 0.75% to 3%, something which hitherto had very few industrialized countries like Japan have done. But he stayed back from explaining how long will it take, how frequently the changes would take place. So it is Now the speculators who have taken on, see, if the rates are going to rise so much to 3%, then people start manipulating the currency. The people who want to make the short-term gains. And this is the effect of that the Japanese currency has now depreciated to 157.67 yens to a dollar, which is, I would say, not the highest, because in 24 October 24 it had gone up to 162, and which was the highest ever rate which the depreciation of the dollar, the market forces were taking. And finally, the Bank of Japan is not committing whether it is going to take any direct action, as it had once taken in October 24, to rein in the dollar vis-a-vis, or rein in the yen vis-a-vis the dollar. So that's been left to speculation, and that is why we are seeing the kind of volatility and taking place in the Japanese market for the last 2.5 or 3 days.
Okay. Now, of course, the sliding of the rupee has also triggered a sell-off of the Japanese government bonds. So I believe the confidence in the Japanese government is also decreasing. Then there's also a concern of a one-sided forex move. What is, well, you know, like you said, there's been volatility in the market in the last 3-4 days, but what's the likely long-term impact that it's going to have on the markets?
The depreciation of the yen has been against all the hard currencies, be it the euro, be it the franc, be it the Swiss franc, and the sterling, pound sterling, and not merely the dollar. So if it is depreciating against all the hard currencies of the world, it doesn't sound very ominous. The Japanese government would need to review the stand which it has taken. I can understand about nuclear weapons, what I mentioned earlier. Yesterday's cabinet, the cabinet secretary equivalent in Japan, he said, we are not going to be making a nuclear bomb. So we are only talking about nuclear, use of nuclear for peaceful purposes, etc. So that is one clarification which helped soothe the market vis-a-vis the issue, something which the Japanese people, who particularly those or whose families suffered in 1945, the Hiroshima and the Nagasaki bombing. But I expect that on its own, with the wage rates continuing to increase, and the Japanese government not willing to step in to rein in the wage increases, could be harmful to the Japanese government, and the Japanese government would do well, whether through the Bank of Japan or on its own, to say that the increase which people are fearing, or which the markets had not seen in the lending rate, is not going to happen soon. For the time being, we are happy with 0.75%. We will give it a trial for a year or two, and then really talk about whether it should be brought down as it used to be in the past, or whether it needs to be increased. A call would be taken then, not leave it vague, and people saying that it's going to be 3%, 2% in 3 years, which is a large increase, which will deter banks from lending, and which will deter investments taking place, because in Japan they have not been used to having such high lending rates particularly, and the people make money much more by the exchange rate variations.
All right.
The bank make money, the investors make money, but the borrowing has never been at a high rate. So I do expect that unless there is a clear action taken by the authorities in Japan, it could go adverse and harm the Japanese economy.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Dua, for explaining that to us and our viewers. And with that, viewers, before we wrap up the bulletin, let's take up some news from Switzerland. A Swiss court has agreed to hear a climate-related legal complaint against cement giant Holcim in what campaigners say is a landmark case for Switzerland. The case was filed by 4 residents of Indonesia's low-lying Pari Island, who argue rising sea levels linked to global warming have caused repeated flooding and that Holcim is not doing enough to cut emissions. The court's decision marks the first time climate litigation against a major corporation has been admitted in Switzerland. Holcim says it will appeal, stressing its commitment to reach net zero by 2015 and noting it has already cut direct emissions by more than half since 2015. Now, joining me in this discussion is Sankalp Suman. He is the Chief Climate Strategist at Upanishad Climate Consulting and he joins us from Tokyo in Japan.
Hi.
Hi Sankalp, thank you for joining me in this discussion. And now, firstly, how do you see the developments that are coming up, particularly, how do you think it influences Swiss climate lawsuits?
Right. So thank you for having me. And I think this is a particularly very landmark moment for climate justice because it makes corporate harm as legally arguable in courts. Now, from here on, whatever would happen, there are so many other Swiss companies that can be taken to court because of their climate footprint. Now, their cases would not be dismissed as easily because a precedent has been set. And it's also curious because, we had the International Court of Justice coming out with its own judgment last year where its legal advisory opinion that states can be held responsible for their climate footprint and even reparations can be paid. Now, this means it's not just states, it's the corporations, functioning within the states that can also be held responsible. This is sort of in line with what is happening in other parts of Europe. For example, there's a case against Shell going on in Netherlands. There's a case against RWE going on in Germany. In Netherlands, I think the district court had initially asked Shell to cut down their emissions by 45%, which was upturned later on. But so this means that there's a larger movement at place, and this has made its headway into Switzerland. And it also means that the recognition of transboundary harm is being done internationally. That it does not mean that your carbon footprint is only impacting in Switzerland. Even if it's going as far away as Indonesia, there are people who can claim reparations because of it, and the courts might be willing to listen to it.
And particularly over the question of CSR and corporate responsibility, what precedent is this admission of the lawsuit going to set?
So yes, this means that beyond emissions, companies will also be held accountable for what their carbon footprint is, what their claims are for reduction, what is their ESG strategies, whether they meet them or not. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a host of companies get out of the science-based target initiatives, which they had initially pledged to join, where they were supposed to meet the net zero by 2050 target. They have come out. This includes large giants like Moody's and Barclays also. So this means that if such companies go back on their word, they can be held responsible to the court. And Switzerland is home to many MNCs, including Nestle, Vitol. Many oil and gas trading companies are based out of Switzerland. So all of these companies are now under the ambit of being able to face consequences on their previous claims. This means that they have to increase their CSR spending on environment. This also means that they have to take their climate claims more seriously than they are doing. It cannot be that they make one claim today and then they come back out of it the next day.
All right. Well, thanks Sankalp for joining me in this discussion. Unfortunately, that's all the time that I have. Viewers, thank you for staying tuned to NewsX World. We keep updating you with all the latest news from around the world right here. Stay tuned.